Welcome back, you curd nerds. We've got yet another mock check ride. Now, this student took a little bit of extra time to get ready for their private pilot check ride. They were a little over 100 hours by the time they got to me to prep them for their private pilot. Now, here's the thing. Everybody takes their own time when it comes to becoming a pilot. If you're going to be a pilot, they say that the bare minimum is 35 hours if you do a 141 program or 40 hours if you do a Part 61 program. The average is 73 hours. It took me, Cheese Pilot, 117 hours to take my private pilot check ride. I struggled with my short field landings. It sucked. This student, they had a gap in their training, and then they had to come back and relearn a whole bunch of stuff. So everybody learns at their own rate. I, as an instructor, would rather you take a little bit of extra time and become a safe pilot. And you and your family and your passengers would probably rather you take a little bit of extra time and ensure that you're a safe pilot than just get kind of ran through a course and just check your boxes and then go be a pilot. Kind of terrifying to just get shoved through a course and not learn anything and just check those boxes. So me as an instructor and you as a student would probably rather get more experience and be a better, safer pilot than just check boxes. So we're not here checking boxes. We're here making sure pilots are safe. We're here making sure students are ready. And we do that with this sponsor. And then we're going to get into the mock check ride. All right. The sponsor for today's video, as you can see, is Pilot Institute. Now, I always recommend doing your ground training concurrently with your flight training so that what you're learning on the ground can apply to what you're learning in the air. Makes sense, right? When you're going through ground training that's separate from your flight training, sometimes it can be hard to make those connections in the aircraft. Sometimes it can be hard to transition from just a rote level of learning to then, an applicative and understanding level of learning. But I also understand that everyone's got different financial situations. Everyone's got different learning styles, and maybe an online ground school would work for you, which is why I've partnered with Pilot Institute. I don't have a team to build a ground school. It's just me here. There's nobody else behind the scenes helping out with this. It's just me. Okay. So Pilot Institute is actually a ground school that I can stand behind. I've seen some of the other products out there. Some of them seem a little dated. Other ones don't seem difficult enough to actually prepare a student for being a pilot. But Pilot Institute is different. So we're here bringing you a private pilot made easy, instrument rating made easy, and we're not just sticking with people in the aircraft. We also have unmanned aerial systems as well. You can work on your Part 107 commercial drone license. So head on over to trainingwithcheese.com. Over there, ground school, and you can gain access to all of these. And, it helps support the channel. So let's get into the mock check ride. A lot of so's in there. Over there. All right.
I wonder if I'm going to get funny YouTube comments for having a Harvard thing in the background right there.
Are you from Harvard? Like, did you go to Harvard?
No, this is actually my brother's childhood room, and he went to Santa Cruz, or he's currently there. He didn't even go to Harvard. I don't know why that's there.
Goals, right? Goals.
Yeah.
But before we go any further, I just always like to ask, are you okay with me recording this and using it for content, whether it be on YouTube, social media, like TikTok, etc.?
Yep.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about how you got to this point, what kind of point you are in your training, how many hours you've got, etc.
Sure. So my check ride is on July 15th, and the day we're recording this is July 12th, so it's in a few days here. I have a little over 100 hours of flight time, which I know is I guess more than average, but I had to take a break. So basically I did a month of training, and then I took a long break, and then I restarted back up. So then, that kind of happened. Also, I think I'm a slow learner, but we all learn at our own pace.
Exactly. And I mean, the average, you're right, is 73. I tell this to any student that's worried about hours. It took me 117 to get my private pilot.
Oh, wow.
So
yeah.
73 is the average. I've trained students that have gotten their private pilot done in 35 hours. So
that's crazy.
I've also trained students that took dang near 200 hours.
Right.
73 is the average. Everyone learns at their own rate. Everyone learns at their own pace, and everyone's got their own financial and personal things. So don't worry about specific hours. Are you safe? Well, we're about to find out. Uh,
Right.
so I got a little script that I go through with every student, right? There's the three possible
Sure.
outcomes of every check ride, right? They're satisfactory, unsatisfactory, and incomplete. Satisfactory means that you're consistently within inside the standards. Doesn't necessarily mean that you don't miss a question, you don't momentarily fall outside the standards. It just means that you are consistently within inside the standards. If you fall outside the standards momentarily, recognize it, apply a correction, state that correction out loud so that the examiner knows what you're doing. If you need to look
Right.
something up, go look something up. If you got to look up everything, that's a problem. But if you need to double
Yeah.
check something that you're not familiar with, go double check it. I have the Far Aim app on my phone, and every time I go fly, I probably look at that dang thing once just so I'm like, wait a minute, am I good? Yeah, I'm good. Okay. Um, so don't be afraid of using source material. Study guides, I generally don't recommend because, well, study guides aren't controlled documents. The source materials
Yeah,
are,
that's fair.
right?
Right.
Um, then we've got unsatisfactory, right? Unsatisfactory means that you're consistently outside the standards. You're a danger to the national airspace system. The examiner has to take control of the aircraft to prevent a pilot deviation, damage to the aircraft, damage to persons or property on the ground. Makes sense, right? If you're
Yep.
gonna kill somebody, we probably shouldn't pass you on your check ride.
Yeah, that checks out.
Next one is going to be incomplete. Incomplete is if you want to look up the appropriate reasons for an incomplete, I think it's 9163 Bravo. That might be one I have to double check, but
Right.
it says things like weather, illness, aircraft airworthiness, safety of flight, right? And the last thing a DP is going to ask before we really dig into it is, have you read the ACS and do you understand the standards that you're being held to?
Right.
Awesome.
And I have read the ACS.
Awesome. The amount of students that don't is alarming. They're like, I got a standardization manual from my flight school. I should be good. No, read that ACS. Awesome. So what documents are you going to need to bring to your check ride?
So I'm gonna need to bring my medical, my government photo ID, and my. So I mean, since I'm still a student, I'm gonna need my logbook with my endorsements for everything with the check ride, and I'm also gonna need my student pilot certificate.
Awesome. If it's your personal airplane, bring the maintenance manual as well. If it's part of a school, go ahead.
I got sorry, I was just gonna say I actually have I fly with like a flying club, and then so I have an instructor hired. I think it's Part 61.
Okay, so yeah, you've got an instructor hired out. Still, having the logbook with a DPE isn't a bad idea. Having your aircraft's logbook isn't a bad idea because the DPE wants to make sure that they're not going to die in this airplane, right?
Yep.
So technically not required, but still recommended. Awesome. Now, I dig into systems just because, well, if you don't know your airplane, the rest of the check ride's probably not going to go that well, right?
Fair. Yeah.
So, we are going to be checking out a 1977 Piper Archer 2. Now, I just found a POH online. I hope it's at least relatively close, and we're going to be using that. It's kind of the source material where to ask questions from. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I actually sent you an email right before we started this, and it has a link to the 19. Yeah, that one has it should have. I think the airspeeds do match up to the one in my POH because that seems to be like the main difference between these is a lot like the airspeeds are slightly off or V speeds.
Okay, yep, I found the one that you sent. Awesome. Yep.
Sweet.
I see that. I see that you even sent like the sectional and everything. I usually just use Sky Vector, but this works as well.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Because I see you even sent the TAC, and we'll go over that because you are in a complicated airspace.
Yeah, it's that was a fun one to plan out.
I was looking at it, and even I was looking at it on Sky Vector. I'm like, I'm just gonna go around. No.
Right. I mean, if you do that, then I'm sure that he's just gonna instantly launch into all the VFR transition routes, right?
Yep. Okay, so let's dig into systems before we start digging into your flight plan.
Cool.
Just tell me about the engine that's in this aircraft. Tell me about the power plant.
Right. So this has a Lycoming 0360. It's a four-cylinder, 180 horsepower, maximum RPMs 2,700. Let's see. It has opposing heads. I think that's it that I
Okay.
got. Naturally aspirated.
Yeah. What do you mean by opposing heads? I just want to make sure that I've got like a full understanding of like what your.
So it's got it's like a boxer engine. So the cylinders are down like this and opposing each other.
Okay. Yep. That makes sense. That makes sense. Awesome. Um, Now 180 horsepower at 2,700 RPM. You're down in California, so relatively sea level, right?
Yep.
Right. So if I take this airplane to, let's say, Colorado, and I try to take off of a field at 9,000 feet, am I going to generate 180 horsepower?
Definitely not.
No. Well, what if I go down to Florida and it is like sea level, right? 1 foot MSL, but there's like 80% humidity. Am I going to generate 180 horsepower?
No.
No, right? Because temperature and moisture will negatively impact performance. Awesome.
Right.
Awesome. So we've got oil in this aircraft. What are some of the purposes of oil?
So oil lubricates, seals, cleans, and cools.
Awesome. Protects, also another, you could add that in there. Really, it's protecting against corrosion. It can cushion against or not impacts. It can cushion against ignition, stuff like that. Awesome. Now, let's dig a little deeper into systems. As soon as I find your next section, that's normal procedures. Still normal procedures. We are looking for. Are there any hydraulics on this aircraft?
So the hydraulic system it has is for the brakes.
Okay. And when you're doing your pre-flight, what are you looking for on the brakes?
So I look at the rotor and then I look at like the caliper to make sure, or I just look to make sure that there's no like leaks coming from like the lines that go into it. Let's see. I think that's really all I honestly look for.
Okay. Now, what color fluid would you be looking for if you were looking for a leak?
Red fluid.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, let's say you saw some red fluid and it just happened to be like a blown line. So the mechanic came out, replaced that line, said, okay, well, it's going to be low on some fluid now. So here's a can of hydraulic fluid. Are you allowed to just top this up?
Yes, I can add fluid.
Yes, you can top up hydraulic systems. Awesome. Now, what are some of your primary flight controls?
So my primary flight controls are my stabilator, my ailerons, and my rudder.
Okay. Have you ever flown anything that didn't have a stabilator?
So I've flown a Cessna 3 times, but I know that one has the elevator.
Okay, so can you give me just a kind of like a Barney style explanation of the difference?
Ooh. I kind of just know them by name. I don't know if I honestly know the exact difference between the two.
Okay, so I mean a stabilator, the whole stabilizer is moving, right?
Right, yep.
Yep. And then the elevator, it's just the elevator.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Right? The horizontal stabilizer stays put.
Right.
But the elevator portion is what moves. That's really all I was looking for. It's just a Barney style explanation of a stabilator.
Gotcha.
All right. Let's get into your fuel system. How much fuel does this thing carry?
It carries 48 usable, 50 total.
Okay. And why is some of it unusable?
It's unusable for what's it called trying to find the words for it. Let's see. For like turning and things like that. So because if it was all the way from the bottom, then the straw, then like if you, and you know what? Now that I'm thinking, if this is like a check ride, this is a good way to dig my hole. The way that I'm answering this.
Some is stuck in the tank and unaccessible via the pickup.
Wow, that's a lot cleaner.
That's it.
That answer.
All right. And that's why we do these things, because like you can look at the diagram, you can study the diagram, you can study your POH, but once somebody asks you to put it in words, you're like, oh shit. Well, like, can I just draw the picture?
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes drawing the picture is even worse.
I'm gonna write down what you said there.
Yep. Well, and here I can even show you what I am looking at. Actually, I need to open up one more bit of software.
No worries.
Duplicate on 3. All right. Now that we got that taken care of. So we've got your fuel diagram right here.
Oh, yep.
Okay. Now, since I've got your fuel diagram right here, if I can't draw on this, can I?
I wonder if Microsoft Paint's still a thing.
Microsoft Paint is a thing. I'm trying something new. I have my iPad hooked up as a third display, and I was going to draw on it, but now I'm.
Oh, that's cool.
Now I'm realizing I can't draw on PDFs because Microsoft Edge took away the. Oh wait, no, there's the draw function. Awesome. So here's your fuel tanks, right? You can see them right here.
Yep.
There's your inlets. You see how that is above the bottom of the tank?
Oh, okay, I see.
That's, I mean, this is kind of a rudimentary drawing, but that's really what it's doing.
Right. Not to scale.
Yeah, not to scale, obviously. Now, if we're looking at your fuel diagram.
Yep.
We've got a carburetor. What can you tell me about a carburetor versus a fuel injector?
Well, so with a carburetor, it atomizes the fuel with the air, and then all that goes into the engine. Versus fuel injectors will individually inject fuel into each cylinder.
Close to it. They'll individually inject it right before the intake valve, but good enough. Now we've got a primer down here. Why would I want to use this versus like pumping the throttle? Have you ever driven a carbureted car?
Yeah.
All right. So in a carbureted car, you got to pump the gas a couple times before you go to start it, right?
Yep.
Right. So why don't I do that in an airplane?
So in an airplane, the carburetor's on the bottom, so you could start a fire.
Yep, I could start a fire because if I kind of come over here and I draw a little picture, again, Helen Keller School of Art, right? If I'm looking at the engine from the back, all right, carburetor is sitting right down here, all right? And you're right. If I was to start pumping fuel in, it would start dribbling out down there. Awesome. And there are countless pipers that burn down every year because people do stuff like that. If you just follow the POH, you're not going to burn your airplane down, right? You'd think
not bring down your airplane is always a good thing.
Yeah, you'd think that would be a pretty easy thing to not do. Awesome. Now, what are some of the downsides of a carburetor?
So the downsides of the carburetor, they're less efficient, susceptible to carburetor icing.
Okay. How would you identify carburetor icing?
So basically it happens relatively slowly, but the power, you'll start getting your RPMs will start dropping a little bit. Then you're like, add some. It starts dropping again. Look down, you're like, what the heck? Add more, keeps dropping. And then eventually you hopefully realize, oh shit, carburetor icing. And then you turn it on. Sorry, I didn't mean to cuss.
Oh no, you're fine. The amount of shit that I have gotten on these videos because I drop an F-bomb here and there, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay, cool.
I don't even bother trying to beep them out anymore. It happens. We're all human. All right. If we
Yeah.
need to use the full breadth of the English language to explain things, whatever. Awesome. Let's talk about your
Cool.
electrical system. What can
All
you
right.
tell me about the electrical system in this aircraft?
So let's see, 14-volt electrical system. We have a 60 amp alternator, 12-volt battery. Let's see, single bus bar.
Okay. Now, why is the alternator a higher voltage than the battery?
So that it charges the battery.
That's exactly it. Now, when you say 60 amps, what does that mean to you?
Um, so is that the maximum amount of amperage that the alternator can support until it would start drawing from the battery?
That's exactly it. That is exactly it. Um, Now, you've got an ammeter in this aircraft, correct?
Yep.
Right. What would it mean if you looked over there and you saw that ammeter showing a negative or showing a discharge?
That would mean that the battery's not charging.
Okay, it mean that I'm pulling directly from the battery. What could I do to try and solve this problem? Just kind of talk me through it.
Sure. So you try to reduce electrical load, and then see if the alternator is still keeping up. But then if the alternator full is just it's going, you could try to cycle. There's the master switch. At least on this aircraft, there's a master and an alternator switch. They're both kind of together on the red switch. You flip that off for a few seconds. Try turning that on. But then yeah, if it is going, then just reduce the electrical load as much as possible. Land as soon as practical.
Awesome. Now, what does soon as practical mean to you?
That means like land as soon as possible, but no, it's not a need yet to like declare an emergency or anything like that.
Okay, so I guess I'll give you a little bit of a scenario. Let's say we're on our cross country route. And again, we'll go over it in a second. Um, we're on our cross country route, and your alternator dies, and you're about 45 minutes away from home.
Right.
What are you gonna do?
I would divert to the nearest airfield.
Okay. Do you know how long your battery is gonna last?
Oh, so I know typically that a battery should last 30 minutes, but with the aftermarket or with the added avionics on it, it might be less.
Okay. I mean, a lot of these. What do you mean by added avionics? What do you've got?
Let's see. So we have two G5s, a 430, 330. I think those are the main things in there that I would think would really affect the battery.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. I mean, those would start drawing a little bit of power. How much power do when you look down at the circuit breaker panel? How many amps or what number is on that circuit breaker for, let's say, your G5s or your 430?
Oh, I've never looked at the number.
Oh, well, it's probably not a bad idea to start looking at those things and keeping those things in mind. Because if this does
Sure.
happen, I think your G5 has a 5 amp circuit breaker. And if you have a 17 amp hour battery, and when I say 5 amp, that is the most it will ever pull. It is not going to pull 5 amps. Um,
Okay.
but you can look
Nice.
at your ammeter, right? Your ammeter shows your rate of discharge, right?
Right.
So if my ammeter says 3 and I have a 17 amp hour battery, how long is my battery going to last?
17 divided by 3.
You're doing the math.
Yeah, it lasts. It lasts. It
It'll
lasts
last a while, right?
Yeah.
So keep that kind of stuff in mind, right? I'd look over at my ammeter. What does my ammeter say? If my ammeter is showing 10 and I've got a 17 amp hour battery, I've got an hour and a half of battery at least. I'm going home, right?
That makes sense. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
And I'm not necessarily saying you're wrong, right? If you want to deviate to the closest airport, deviate to the closest airport. But these are kind of the things that maybe you should be. These are the things that I would be looking at if I was in this scenario.
Sure.
All right. Now, Oh, where'd it go? All right, let's talk about how this aircraft stays warm, right? So this airplane has a heater. Where does that heat come
Yep.
from?
So it's a heat that's deflected from around the exhaust heat, the
Okay.
heat from the exhaust.
Okay. Is there any concerns with that?
Yeah, that can lead to carbon monoxide poisoning.
Okay. Um, what are some of the symptoms that you might start experiencing if you did have if you did have an exhaust leak?
You can experience headache, sleepiness, also inherent symptoms of hypoxia.
All right. And what are some of those symptoms?
Let's see, bluing. What's it called? Stenosis.
Bluing of the fingertips and lips.
Yeah,
I don't. We're
yeah.
not doctors here, right?
Okay, yeah. All right, bluing to the fingertips and lips. Let's see. Oh, they're slipping my mind right now.
Okay. Well, bluing of the fingertips and lips. That's a good start. Euphoria,
Yep.
delusion, sleepiness,
Right.
fatigue, headache, nausea. These are all symptoms that you might start. Air hunger. These are all symptoms that you might start experiencing from hypoxia. There's your
Right.
electrical equipment. That's continued. I was actually trying to see if I could find your battery on your equipment list because that's where you can find it, right? So that you can see actually how big your battery is. But I'm not seeing it,
Uh,
so I'm not worried about it right now. Let's go talk about
are you talking about equipment lists like in the POH?
in the POH, like in the weight and
I don't.
balance
I don't
section.
think we. Oh, in the way to. Oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah. Not like the KOEL or the MEL or anything like that. I'm talking about the weight and balance equipment list because, batteries weigh something. They have to be
Yeah.
accounted for, right?
Yep. That makes sense.
All right. Let's go check out some limitations. That's emergency procedures, continuing on. Here we go. Now, we've obviously got some speeds we should never exceed, some speeds we should be worried about, some cautionary speeds. What speed in this aircraft should I never exceed?
154 knots.
154 knots. Perfect. What is VNO? What does VNO mean, and what is the number associated with it?
It's normal operating speed, and it's 125 knots.
All right. So
And go ahead.
your POH doesn't refer to as a normal operating speed. It's the little mnemonic that everyone uses to remember it, right? Because VNO, normal operation. Your aircraft actually refers to it as the maximum structural cruising speed.
Oh, yep. I've seen that.
All right. So I definitely use that kind of terminology because it's not your normal operation, right? It's the limit of your normal operation,
Okay, that makes sense.
right? Because when can I exceed this speed?
In smooth air.
Yep. And then only then with extreme caution.
Right.
What is VA?
VA is 113 at gross.
All right. And what does it mean?
That is maneuvering speed.
Okay. So does that mean I can go out and do, spins and barrel rolls and split S's and Emmelmans and all that stuff at 113 knots in a Cherokee?
So this aircraft's actually not rated for spins,
Okay.
but it allows one full control deflection without over stressing the aircraft.
Awesome. One full control deflection, right? So I can't be stomping on
Yeah.
rudders and stuff like that.
Right.
Perfect. When you're looking at your airspeed tape, because you do have your G5s now, but remember your G5 cannot be used as your primary airspeed source.
Right.
But when you're looking at your airspeed tape, what does the bottom of the green arc indicate?
Bottom of the green arc is stall clean.
Okay. And what about the top of the white arc?
Top of the white arc is maximum flaps extended speed.
Okay. And what speed would that be?
102 knots.
Yep, you are right. Awesome. Now we talked about the aircraft's not rated for spins. Perfect. Is there anything else any other kind of conditions this aircraft's not qualified to fly in?
Icing conditions.
Perfect. I want to make sure I'm not accidentally showing you the PO. No, no, I'm not. Yeah, you just know these things.
Oh,
Yeah, because I'm looking at your POH and you're just like you just got the answers
you
right
know,
there.
I remember from your previous videos, as well as my instructor says it. I've read the POH.
Yeah, read the POH. I don't understand the students that don't read the POH. I don't understand the instructors that don't harp on their students to read the POH. That is the authority of how to operate this aircraft. I know before I ever bought mine, I read through countless POHs for that style of aircraft.
Sure.
Um, is there any limit to the baggage compartment?
Are you saying like a weight limit?
Is there any limit? Is there weight limits? Is there speed limits? Is there?
Speed limits?
Oh, I'm just
The
asking.
baggage
Is there
compartment?
any limits associated with the baggage compartment?
I can't think of the limits off the top of my head, but then obviously, your weight and balance limits because that's a longer arm.
Okay. So there's not just weight and balance limits. You could be within weight and balance and exceed your maximum baggage compartment capacity, which is 200 pounds.
Okay.
All right. Um, so not bad. That was one that a lot of students they don't hang out in the baggage compartment and they're not spending too much time loading their training aircraft down, right?
Right. Right.
So just keep those kind of things in mind. That baggage compartments do have limitations very often. Like a Cessna 172, it can technically hold, I think, 250 pounds. Maybe it's 200 pounds in the baggage compartment, but you can hold 200 in one or 50 in another, which means that like if you were to fill both individual compartments up to their gross, you would exceed the limit of the total baggage compartment.
Gotcha.
So just keep that in mind. All right.
Yeah, good to know. Thank you.
Limitations, not too bad, not too bad. I was genuinely impressed. I wouldn't dig too much deeper into limitations. Now let's get into some emergency procedures. Now, your aircraft doesn't specifically call out memory items. I obviously think that there should be some memory items for every aircraft because fires don't wait for you to pull out a checklist.
Sure.
But there are certain instances in which referring to a checklist is the appropriate response. But
Mm.
let's start out with an engine fire during start. What are you going to do?
So an engine fire during start, you keep cranking to try to get the engine to start and extinguish the fire. But then if you can't do it, or if the engine's not going to start, then you'd abandon the aircraft.
Okay, so there's a couple other things I would do before I abandon the aircraft, because well, right now fuel can still get to that fire. Okay, so we're gonna keep.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep, we're gonna keep cranking that starter. Mixture idle, throttle full open, electric pump off, fuel selector off, and then abandon if the fire continues.
Right.
Okay, because if you left your fuel pump on, like it's just gonna keep
Not a good
feeding the
idea. Yeah.
fire, right? Doesn't matter
Right.
how much water they pour on that damn thing. Um, that thing is just going to continue burning, at least until the
Makes
fuel pump
sense.
wires burn through.
Right.
Okay. Um, Now, what are you going to do if you end up? We already talked about an alternator failure. We already, if you started experiencing just engine roughness during cruise.
Uh, oh, so I mean, if I started experiencing engine roughness during cruise, let's see. I mean,
I would
that's
refer
not
to
that's
the
not like the
checklist.
yeah. Okay.
Yep, I would refer to the checklist. Because are we going to die right now?
Not immediately.
No. And still, I mean, we could still very easily survive. Engine roughness,
Right.
um, carb heat on probably wouldn't be would be like the only memory item that I would have for this one. If carb heat didn't resolve my problem, then I'm gonna go to the checklist.
Right.
All right. Um, Now what about a fire in flight?
So if you had a fire in flight, you'd want mixture full lean or full lean, fuel selector valve off, fuel pump off, and you want well, yeah, you want master off, and you'd want to do a emergency descent.
Okay. And what airspeed would you accelerate to during that emergency descent in an attempt to blow out this fire?
So you could either do it. I know that it could either be done with flaps, and then just pitch for 102, like in your 35-45 degree banks, or without flaps, you can pitch for 125.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I would do it without flaps. An emergency descent, it depends on the situation, right? If we're gonna do an
Right.
emergency descent because we're worried about hypoxia, or there's a passenger that's struggling, then obviously let's do it with flaps. Let's increase our descent rate. But if we're worried about blowing out a fire, then we're gonna do an emergency descent without flaps so that we can get up to a higher speed and try and blow out that
Oh,
fire,
that makes sense. Yep.
right? At least that's the way I do it. Your POH doesn't call out a specific speed. Um, but
Yep.
if you can explain it in that way, I couldn't imagine a DPE getting pissed off about that. Now, a couple other emergencies that we got to go through. These ones aren't necessarily are well. One of them is going to be part of your POH, but the rest of them aren't. How do we recover from a spin?
So from a spin, power to idle, ailerons neutral, uh, full opposite rudder of the direction of spin, and the rudder that fights you the most, and elevator forward.
Awesome, awesome. We know which rudder to press. We know we got to slam that yoke forward. Awesome. What are you gonna do if you inadvertently enter IMC? Let's say we're cruising along and it starts to rain, and you're like, "My airplane's not made out of sugar, so it's not gonna melt. So let's continue
Right.
on." Then it starts raining a little bit more. You're saying, this is about 7 mile visibility. I can make it. I can make it. And then you like look down at your iPad or your sectional, and you look back up, and the rain got a lot worse, and you can't see shit. What are you gonna do?
So honestly, what I would do is, this plane has autopilot, so you can push wings level, to make sure that you don't do anything stupid. But what you should do is, I would know that, from the direction I just came, I'd bug 180 degrees of where I was headed, and then try to make a circle fly out. Assuming that there's obviously no terrain near me, that would be an issue.
Okay. Now, if the autopilot is going to be functioning in the airplane, I'd definitely make sure that you know how to use it. The last thing you want to do is stall your airplane using the autopilot on a check ride, because your autopilot
Yeah,
is more than happy to stall the airplane.
yeah. I'm not gonna use it on the check ride.
So any operable equipment in an aircraft is expected to for you to be comfortable with using it on a check ride.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Um, because here's the thing: if you're part of a flying club, there's nothing stopping you from using that thing when you go and fly on your own as a private pilot,
Sure.
right? So when I was doing, or when I did stage checks for UND, and also when I did mock check rides outside of UND, if there was an autopilot, there was the expectation that the student at least had a decent understanding on how to use it, like heading mode, climb modes, stuff like that.
Okay.
There's nothing stopping you from pulling the circuit breaker and calling it in op.
Right.
Um, I've seen a lot of students do that for their check rides. Do I recommend it? No. You learn how to use your
Yeah.
airplane.
I mean, I guess, for performing the maneuvers, well, I guess that's part of what the DP is going to be looking for. You'll have to at least turn off the electronic stall protection. Um, but what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So I have had a decent amount of experience using it. Like, my CFI who's, taught me how to use it. We've spent a decent amount of time practicing it, but thank you. I'm definitely going to, make sure that my skills are sharp with it before my check ride.
Yeah, and I mean, here's the thing: there should be a manual for it, either attached to your POH or in the aircraft.
Yep.
Okay, so read through the manual. Garmin also, I'm assuming it's the GFC 550.
I think that's the right one. Yeah, it.
GFC 550 images.
Yep, that's the one. Yep. Oh,
Oh, what? Oh,
oh, sorry. I saw it on the screen for a second. Then
yeah.
it went away. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, this one?
Yep, that's the one.
Okay. Yeah, these ones are pretty straightforward. These ones are pretty easy. Just make sure get your flight director up before you start pressing buttons.
Right.
That is the biggest thing that I see students mess up on their check
Writing
rides
that down.
is they press autopilot on before ever pulling up their flight director, and then the airplane goes off doing whatever it wants to do. And the student's
Right.
like, "What's it doing?" And I'm over there trying not to giggle. Um, I'm kidding. I don't giggle at students. Um, all right. All right. So we talked about limitations. Now, let's say you didn't end up outside of that icing, right? Or not icing, but IMC. You entered the instrument meteorological conditions by just kind of cruising through the rain. You turned
Uh-huh.
around and the weather still sucks. You still can't see. It's been like 5 minutes. You've been maintaining that heading pretty well, but you still can't see. What are you going to do now?
I would call for help.
Okay. Who are you going to call? Ghostbusters?
Right. Well, if I have like a recent like if I was on either flight following or if I was on like a recent controller that I was talking to, I'd contact them. Otherwise, you can always use 121.5.
Okay. And what are you going to say?
I would request vectoring. Just say that I accidentally flew into IMC conditions and request vectoring
Okay.
to like nearest airfield.
All right. Cherokee 123, or sorry, Archer 123. Make a left turn. This is vectors for the ILS to Seattle.
Oh, okay.
So what else are you going to include in that radio call?
Include that you're not an instrument rated pilot.
Yes. So the radio call that I get students to kind of try to memorize is ATC Cessna 123, VFR pilot in IMC conditions, requesting vectors to the nearest VFR airport.
Okay.
Okay. The only reason I, have them like memorize that little bit of phrase because it's easy to insert the appropriate information into it. And if you have a phrase memorized, you're already terrified, you're already nervous, you're already going to be struggling to maintain level.
Sure.
The last thing you need to do is try to figure out exactly what to say, right? So, ATC Cessna 123 VFR pilot in IFR conditions, request vectors to the nearest VFR airport.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, of course. And those are just the big ones that people get themselves in trouble, especially ones that become really reliant on their autopilot. The moment their autopilot kicks off, they have no idea what they're doing because they're in IFR conditions when they shouldn't be.
Right.
Awesome. Now, next bit of questions aren't necessarily again going to be specifically to your aircraft. We can obviously use your aircraft as an example, but this is more going to be general aircraft operation and airworthiness and regulation, right?
Okay.
So let's get into some airworthiness. What documents are required to be in your aircraft for it to be airworthy?
Let's see. So you need your airworthiness certificate. You need your registration, radio operating license for both the aircraft and for the pilot. If you were leaving the country, you need your operating handbook with all supplements. Let's see. You need your weight and balance sheet, and you also need the data plate on the aircraft. You need all placards that are required for the aircraft, and your compass deviation card.
Awesome. Awesome. That is probably the most comprehensive list of documents I have heard from a private pilot applicant in a while. And that is everything. I know there's some of them
Sweet.
like the data plate. Obviously, that's not coming off the airplane. That thing's riveted on.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
But you are right. It technically has to be there. If it's missing, it's like, ah, shit. Well, where do I get one of those? I don't even know how to get one of those. I'm serious.
Right.
I have no idea how to get a replacement one of those. I should probably figure that out. If somebody knows in the comments, like, let me know. How do you get a replacement data plate?
Right. I have no idea either.
Yeah, probably FISDO. Awesome.
Oh,
Now,
that makes sense.
let's talk about some of those documents, right? Airworthiness certificate does this airworthiness certificate ever expire?
It never expires.
Okay. Is there anything that would cause it to become invalid?
It wouldn't be valid if you don't do either required maintenance or inspections in order to keep the plane airworthy.
All right. Now, there's like one other one: aircraft destroyed all beyond all reasonable repair.
Okay.
Right. But most of the time, the airworthiness certificate's with the airplane at the time, and usually gets destroyed in the whatever destroyed the aircraft. Um,
That makes sense.
Now, when you said if you don't comply with the maintenance, what maintenance items do we have to comply with to make sure our airplane's airworthy?
So let's see. So the aircraft needs to have an annual every 12 calendar months. This is for IFR, but your VOR every 30 days. Let's see, 100 hour, and that's every 100 hours. Let's see, altimeter every 24 calendar months. Transponder every 24 calendar months. ELT every 12 calendar months. And let's see, where am I? And static system every 24 calendar months, and all airworthiness directives that need to be complied with.
Awesome, awesome. Now, the question was, what maintenance items do we need to comply with to ensure that our aircraft is airworthy? Now, you said more than what is required for our aircraft to be airworthy. None of what you said about none of what you said
Oh,
about
okay,
the
I
ones
see.
to be airworthy was incorrect, but the question was which one of these are required to maintain our aircraft's airworthiness, not which one of these are required based on the Aviate acronym that you remember,
Right.
right?
That
Um,
makes sense.
so just answer the question that is being asked, not answer the question from your rote memorization. Answer the
Right.
specific question because these are supposed to be scenario based, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And the scenario is how do we keep our airplane airworthy? Not how do we keep our airplane operating in its current capacity, not how do we keep our airplane operating in a manner that that would not how do we keep our aircraft operating in a manner that it's currently operating in. So annual, right? 12 calendar months. Now, let's say I do my annual on January 1st of 2024. When is my annual due next?
The last day of January 2025.
Awesome. Now you said 100-hour inspection. When is a 100-hour inspection required? Every 100 hours? If so, I
Um,
don't tell the FAA.
so it's required. Required if the airplane is for hire, and it can be overflown up to 10 hours in order to fly it to a place where it needs to get maintenance at.
Okay, so let's say, for example, I've got an airplane. All right. Actually, here's a better example. There's a guy up here called Duffy. All right. He leases airplanes to people. All right. When he
Okay.
leases those airplanes, he's leasing them to them so that they can make sure, so that they can use them for whatever purposes they want to use them for, whether it be fun, instruction, commercial, etc. He leases airplanes to people. Does Duffy need to accomplish a 100-hour inspection on his airplanes that he is leasing out to people?
Huh. That's a good question because I know that there's a stipulation there's like stipulations with that for the 100 hour.
Okay. Do you know where to
Um,
find it?
I should have had my FAR-AM with me because this is a mock check ride. I can go get it to go find it.
So the reg is 91409 Bravo. 91409 Bravo just states that a 100-hour inspection is only required for aircraft that are aircraft that are being used for compensation or hire in the carriage of passengers other than crew.
Okay.
Okay. Also, they are required if they are being used for instruction. If the operator of the aircraft is also providing the instructor. Right. So let's take a look at your flying club. Your flying club.
Mhm.
Is your flying club using an instructor and that is the only instructor that you can use?
No, it's a very large flying club. So there's a bunch of instructors in the aircrafts, and we're all partial owners of the aircraft. I think we've talked about this before, or my instructors talked to me about this before, and how it's like he described it as like kind of a gray area whether or not the 100 hours is required because we're all technically part owners, but then technically the CFI is also a member of the club, and then he's providing instruction in the aircraft but then also I'm a partial owner that's receiving instruction in the aircraft.
Yep. So it's not really a gray area. The delineating factor is whether or not I can teach in it. If your flying club
Okay.
prohibits an outside instructor from teaching it in it, then it needs a 100-hour inspection. If any instructor can show up and teach in an air, because that's the thing, it's a fractional ownership. It's not even a flying club at this point. It's a fractional ownership. Y'all all have a fractional part of this aircraft. Y'all are now owners of this airplane. An owner can receive instruction in their airplane without having a 100-hour inspection. The problem that's going to happen, and I'm not going to ask you to clarify this because I don't want you to get in trouble. I don't want your instructor to get in trouble. I don't want your flight school to get in trouble, but I'm just going to clarify the regulations for you.
Okay.
If your flying club prohibits outside instructors from teaching in it, that is not a flying club. That is a flight school. Don't tell me one way or the other because I do not want to be held accountable for any kind of violations of regulations, but just keep that in mind. It's not a gray area. It's just a misunderstood area.
Okay.
So the only times that a 100-hour inspection is required, just to recap, is carriage of passengers for compensation or hire, or a flight school is offering an aircraft and an instructor together.
Okay. That makes sense.
So, things like crop dusting, cargo flights, aerial photography, none of that requires a 100-hour inspection.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
Of course. Now, airworthiness directives. What are airworthiness directives?
Airworthiness directives, they're regulatory directives that are required to be complied with in order for the aircraft to remain airworthy.
Okay. Are there any ADs on your aircraft?
Yes, there are a couple.
Okay.
Or a few.
What are some of them?
We have it's like the ignition cylinder for the key that needs to be inspected every 100 hours. Let's see. That's the one that I can think of off the top of my head because I know that it always happens with every 100-hour, and then you see it like in the maintenance logs when you look through it. There's another one that gets inspected.
Okay.
That I can't remember at the moment though.
You're fine. Is there any other kind of maintenance that could be done? Like let me rephrase this. Are airworthiness directives always inspections?
Well, it could be something. It could be something, for instance, where they find like an issue with the aircraft, with something that it came with, and it needs to be replaced.
Awesome.
So it doesn't always have to be an inspection.
Awesome. Now, let's say Piper sent you a service bulletin in the mail saying, "Hey, we see that you're a fractional ownership of this 1977 PA-28 Archer II. We recommend that you do this maintenance." Is that required?
So it's not required for airworthiness.
No, it's not. Your insurance thinks it's required, though.
Right.
Awesome. Now, let's say we walk up to this airplane and your G5 is dead. It just won't power on. The circuit breaker popped. You tried to press it in. The circuit breaker popped again. So there's something wrong with it. Is this airplane airworthy?
It can't be your primary airspeed indicator, and there is also an airspeed indicator in there. So if you could properly if you could properly disable it and placard it inoperative, it could be airworthy.
Okay. Now, how do I know that? Let's just say another item broke. What am I going to check to make sure that this airplane's airworthy?
So my aircraft doesn't have an MEL, doesn't have a KOEL. And actually, I watched your video that you posted yesterday, and I looked up the type certificate data sheet for my aircraft, and it doesn't have like a list of required equipment on it. So then I guess I would lastly refer to 91205.
Okay, so your type certificate data sheet, it should give some kind of description of the aircraft, right? It says like what engine is in it, right?
Yeah.
Those are the things that are on your type certificate data sheet. It means
Oh,
that you
okay.
can't LS swap your Cherokee.
Bummer. I wish I could.
Yeah, right. So it's actually kind of funny. There's a seaplane that everyone loves called a Republic CB. It's from the 40s, and I guess there's something with the paperwork that allowed somebody to actually LS swap one. And now it is a 450 horsepower LS6 Republic CB. And
So I guess it's not considered experimental. It's just fully,
I think it's still a
you know.
certified aircraft. Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. And I mean, don't get me wrong. They want like 280 grand for it. And I don't have 280 grand, but like
Yeah.
a
I wish.
450 horsepower LS6 freaking
Yeah, that's
seaplane.
cool.
Yeah, it is a blast. I like my seaplane though. Awesome. So you check 91205. There's a couple other things. Your STCs. All right. You have STCs in your aircraft. Supplemental type certificates, right?
Mhm.
There are supplemental type certificates that have required equipment on them. I'll use my airplane for an example because I don't really feel like reading through all of your STCs just if I'm going to be frank about it.
Yeah, sure.
I have an STC on my aircraft for vortex generators. Do you know what vortex generators are?
Are those like the winglet tips on the ends?
Well, those are winglets. Vortex generators are little nubbins that sit on top of the wing. That make it that they help accelerate the boundary layer. So here I'll show you some. Yeah, here
Are they like the little like bars they're kind of on?
Those are stall
Okay.
strips. Vortex
Okay, I see.
generators. These are vortex generators. Okay, those little tips right there are vortex generators. And oh, look, here's a perfect picture. What they do is they take high energy air outside of the boundary layer and bring it down into the boundary layer to help accelerate it, to help you generate more lift at lower speeds.
Is the boundary layer what you're like kind of the layer of your
The
low
laminar
pressure?
flow. Yep.
Okay.
The
It's
laminar flow
okay.
over the wing. See, without vortex generators, you start to get
Okay, that makes sense.
separation at the back of the wing.
Right.
With vortex generators, stays attached the entire way.
Okay.
Okay, these things are absolutely awesome. I absolutely love mine. They've dropped my stall speed down to like 38. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah, it's nuts. They have saved my life at least twice. But back to the STC. An STC, I have a supplemental type certificate that says I am allowed to have those on my airplane. But what it also says is that if I am missing more than more than 3, my airplane is no longer airworthy until I
Gotcha.
replace them. So that's that supplemental type certificate telling me what equipment is required in my airplane. So since you have supplemental type certificates, make sure you read through them, right? Make sure there's nothing in there that a DPE might be like, I bet they don't know about that.
Cool.
All right.
Right. Yeah, thank you.
Of course. And here's the thing. I'm not going to lie. It's not like I knew these things right off the top of my head when I was going through private pilot. I didn't know about stuff like this until I owned an airplane, which is why I kind of cover it because it is technically required.
Sure, yeah.
All right. Now, do you need a landing light?
So for day flight, no.
What about night?
For night flight, if the aircraft is for hire.
So, do you need a landing light?
Yes.
Is the aircraft for hire?
Oh crap. No. Or well, I mean, I guess I have to. I want to revisit what we discussed earlier. I guess to determine whether or not it is.
So, if your flying club, if they allow other instructors, and again, I don't want you to, clarify one way or the other. If they allow other instructors, then the airplane is not currently being used for hire. You are hiring an instructor to teach you in it. The aircraft is
Okay.
not being used for hire. The aircraft, The purpose of the aircraft's operation is for instruction. Your instructor is being hired, but your instructor technically isn't being hired as a pilot. That's why instructors only need a third-class medical.
All right, so then not required.
It is not required. Now, this one isn't the carriage of passengers, blah, blah, blah kind of one, right? This one specifically says if the airplane is being used for hire, you do need a landing light. Okay.
Right.
So if I'm carrying boxes, if I'm carrying people, if I'm doing crop dusting, right, I do need a landing light, and it does need to be operational.
Right.
All right. Now, let's talk about your privileges and limitations, right? So as a student pilot, you obviously have some limitations. Let's say, yay, you passed your private pilot's license. Whee!
Yeah.
What can you do now?
So I can carry passengers and fly into a Class Bravo.
All right. Now, is there anything else you could do?
Let's see. I could fly an aircraft with passengers for a charity event. I can participate in search and rescues. I think it's after 200 hours I could demonstrate an aircraft for aircraft sale. Let's see. I think I'm missing one more.
All right. I mean, that's a pretty good list of them, right? Did you cover the pro rata share? I think you did.
Oh, I didn't cover pro rata share yet, but yeah, it's up to you could split the cost up to pro rata share.
Okay. Now, you said your brother, he's off at college or whatnot right now. Let's say he flies into your closest Bravo airport and you go pick him up. Okay.
Right.
Correction. He gets a rental car and drives out to you. Right. He drives out to you. You take him up for a flight. He's like, "Oh dear Lord, my brother's a pilot." I don't know if that's how your brother sounds, but we're going to assume that's how your brother sounds. He talks like a debutante. All right.
You actually nailed it. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, perfect.
I'm just kidding.
So y'all go up in an airplane, y'all go flying around, and he's like, "Dear Lord, this is heavenly. How about you just fly me back to my Bravo airport, and I'll get on my flight from there. I'll give you $100 for gas from my college fund." Is this legal?
No.
No. So what makes it illegal?
So, well, obviously there's the part where I don't have or it's not like, for me, there's no like common reason for travel. Like I don't have a purpose to travel to that destination.
Yeah, and
then I'm just transporting him.
And that's really the big takeaway. I don't know how much gas it would cost for you to fly to your local Bravo airport.
Right, because those things cost, yeah.
I mean, airplanes aren't cheap. 10 gallons, that's about an hour. And I mean, I don't think I've ever turned an airplane on and operated it for less than an hour.
Yeah, our aircrafts are provided wet, but I've had to use the plane, like someone previously flew cross country and parked in them when we were doing night flight. The company that fuels the planes was already shut, so then I had to go actually fuel the plane up, and then you can get like reimbursed for it. But I actually filled the plane up. Now it was crazy expensive. I think it was like $143 to fill the plane up, and I was like, wow.
Yeah, it is. It is not cheap. That's why every time I look down at my airplane when I'm climbing and I see 17 gallons an hour, and I'm like, do I really need to climb this fast?
Right.
I'm good. Let's just go over to the water. I'll just hang out down here at like 1,000 feet. I don't need to climb that long. Yeah, fuel is expensive. My airport is $6.85 a gallon.
Oh wow. What state are you in?
Wisconsin. Why is it more?
That makes sense. You're a cheesehead.
Yeah.
No, it was actually cheesehead. That all checks out. So it was actually, I think I filled up like last week for $5.89.
Oh God, I remember I used to like go out of my way to get the cheap gas that was $3.85 in Arizona, and now I would be more than happy to pay the $5 it was at the airport I was operating out of.
Yeah. And just to say that is like an airport where we only have like a couple club planes. But then the other airport, like our main airport that I always fly out of and I'm soloed to fly out of, that one every single time we get charged like a fuel surcharge for the rental because I think it's like $9 an hour right now, or sorry, $9 a gallon right now.
That is nuts. It was. I
Yeah.
flew down to Burlington one time with my wife and my mother-in-law. We went there's this place. I keep meaning to make the video. There's a place called Adrian's Custard down there, and I mean my real name is Adrian. So we go down there and make the joke that it's my custard place, my ice cream place. But either way, we flew down there and we got there and there was gas that was like $4.10 a gallon, and I couldn't
Oh
get
wow.
any because there was a storm coming, and I couldn't like we had a time frame and I didn't have time to put gas in my airplane.
Oh, bummer.
And then I had to come back and pay like $2 more. That was, but we understand we need a common purpose.
Right.
All right. So let's say that, you guys had a common purpose, but he just didn't get back on the airplane for some reason or another, right? Y'all went there for lunch and then he jumped on an airplane and went elsewhere. So now you're in a Class Bravo airspace and the visibility is like 2 miles. And the ceiling's like 5,000 feet, but the visibility is just 2 miles. And you look at a TAF nearby or you look at a METAR nearby and you can see that the weather gets better real close to this airport. It's just right here. There's just some rain causing the visibility to drop down to 2 miles. Is there any way that you could leave or are you stuck waiting on this rain to clear up?
I mean, you could request special VFR, but well, yeah, you could request a special VFR.
Okay. What was the but? Anything?
Well, sorry, I was just thinking because you were talking about Class Bravo and then you said you structured it. You said 2 statute miles visibility, which is less than 3. So then I was thinking about that part.
Yep. Yeah. And that's awesome. Now let's say you go off to a Charlie airspace, right? You're flying along. What weather would you expect to see, or what weather would you need to see at this airport for it to be legal for you to operate at?
So 3 statute miles of visibility. You'd want, or are you saying like leaving the airport, or if you're flying?
Yeah, if you're going to it, right? If you're going to it. So
you're going to it. All right, yeah.
So 3 statute mile visibility.
Yep. So then 1,000 feet above clouds, 500 feet below, and 2,000 feet of horizontal separation.
Awesome. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about airspace when we get into the sectional, but for now, let's talk about aerodynamics. What are flaps good for? I know you brought it up a little bit, but what are flaps really good for?
So flaps, you can increase your angle of descent without increasing airspeed.
Yep, that's pretty much what they're for. So what are they doing to the wing to make it so that we can increase our descent rate without increasing our airspeed?
They're changing your chord line.
Okay. So what is chord line?
Chord line is a it's a line that's drawn from the aft end to the forward, or to the forward end.
So from the leading edge to the trailing edge?
Yeah, leading edge to the trailing edge. Yeah, sorry. That's what I was looking for. Yeah.
Now, what is so important about chord line? Why do we care about chord line? You're saying it's increasing my chord line? Like, is it making it longer? So what other angle?
It would. I think it would make it longer.
Yeah, it'd make it a little bit longer. It's increasing my upper camber, and what it's also doing is increasing my angle of attack.
Right.
So it's not necessarily increasing. Depending on the flaps, you can lengthen your chord line, which would just increase your surface area.
Right.
But I think the big takeaway is more of it increases my angle of attack, right? And when I increase my angle of attack, what do I generate more of?
I generate more lift.
And when I generate more lift, I generate more drag. Awesome. What kind of drag, or what are the different types of drag?
So there's parasite drag and here, right? Why am I blanking right now?
Because you need a cookie. I don't know.
Right. It's the for some reason I can't think of the drag that's the byproduct of lift.
Well, so when we induce lift, what else do we induce?
Induced drag.
We
There it
induce
is.
drag,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, okay, awesome. Which one of those decrease with speed?
Decrease with speed. Parasite.
So parasitic drag, I guess let's compare this to something everybody understands. Cars, right? Do cars
Right.
generate induced drag?
Induced drag?
Yeah,
No.
no, because they don't really generate lift, right? Some cars
Yeah.
generate downforce to keep them stuck to the ground, but
Oh, sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
But so if induced drag was or trying to make this connection and make this comparison, so
Sure.
that we can work through it. Induced drag is the one that decreases with airspeed because I am reducing my angle of attack, so I am reducing my induced drag as
Oh,
I
that makes
increase my
sense.
speed, right?
Yeah, that makes
Um,
sense.
because I generate more lift with more air over the wing, right?
Right.
So if I'm generating more lift at a higher speed, I need less angle of attack, so I need less, so I generate less drag.
Okay.
All right. Now, what is a stall?
A stall is when you exceed the critical angle of attack.
Okay, and what happens around the wing? Like aerodynamically speaking, what is happening?
Your laminar flow is breaking on the wing. Um, yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah, the laminar flow starts separating from the wing, and we start. Now, when I have stalled, is my wing producing any lift at all?
It's still producing some, but not enough to keep you,
Aloft.
flying.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now, what would happen if I stalled in an uncoordinated fashion?
Stalling uncoordinated is what leads to spins.
Okay, and where am I most likely going to enter a spin?
Um, you could be. I know the most common one is turning from base to final and then using the rudder to shoot yourself in.
Yeah, I mean that's it. That is where most stall spin incidents happen.
And unfortunately, that one's not recoverable. Most likely.
It is recoverable. I've known instructors that have recovered. It's terrifying.
Oh wow. Oh wow.
Yeah, it's terrifying. Instructor looked down for like 2 seconds, and next thing you know, eep, and they're upside down. It was, oh god, it happened on a stage check too. Do you think the
Oh
student
geez,
passed?
man.
No,
I'm
the
gonna
student
assume
did
no.
not pass. All right. Now, your airplane, especially in a Piper, it's got a lot of angle from like where the wings attach to the tip of the wings. Like it tilts up a lot, right?
Right.
What angle is that?
Angle of incidence?
No angle of
Or no, wing wash? Wing wash?
No, wing wash is that blue stuff that you should be spraying on the wing after you go flying. You're
Okay.
thinking washout.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But that's not it either. It's dihedral.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so the wings being
I
tilted
thought,
up.
oh, sorry. Yeah, yeah, okay.
Here, I've got one. The wings, they're tilted up like this. That is
Yep.
dihedral. That is a stabilizing angle. When the aircraft gets disturbed, you end up with more smooth air or more air, the air lines up more with the wing, causing it to generate slightly more lift to restabilize the airplane. It works almost
Right.
like a keel on a boat.
Provides like roll stability.
Yep. So since you brought up the other two, let's talk about them. Washout. What washout is it's the wings twist from root to tip. Okay.
Oh, honestly, I thought that's what you were asking for.
Oh no, what I was talking about is the wing lower here and higher here.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So that is dihedral. Washout is the
Yep.
twist from the root to the tip.
Right.
Why-
That's why I said angle of incidence, because I thought you were talking about where the angle changes from there to the end. That's my bad.
No, you're good. And that's some of the limiting factors of this kind of format of mock check rides is, I
Sure.
gotta go find airplanes or try to draw pictures and stuff.
Yeah.
But all right. Now, why do we have washout?
Oh, it's so you it's because so when the plane stalls, it stalls from the inside out. So you still keep you keep whatchamacallit, your aileron flight control longer.
Yep, that's exactly it. Um, Now, when I bank this airplane over past about 30 degrees, where does it want to go? Does it want to go back to normal or does it want to continue to bank in?
I think that's far enough. I think we want to keep going.
Yeah, it'll want to keep going. Why?
Um, I think it's your because when you're banking like that, your whatchamacallit, your total aerodynamic forces, you have a horizontal and vertical component of lift, and you increased your horizontal component of lift to the point that it's going to want to go this way versus
Well, your
that.
horizontal component of lift is really the one that just pulls you along through the turn, right? What's happening
Right,
here is this wing's now moving faster and it's moving fast enough. It's moving faster enough to overcome the stabilizing forces of this wing. So since it's faster, it generates more lift and tilts it over.
right.
That's it.
Okay,
All right. It's
that
it's
makes
less
sense.
about, hey, I'm starting to generate more horizontal lift than vertical lift. What's going to happen with
Uh huh.
this is I'm just going to slice out of the turn. Right. But the
Right.
fact that it wants to keep banking is because this wing is moving faster than this wing enough to overcome the stabilizing forces of this wing, causing it to continue to roll over.
Faster than. All right. Stabilizing forces of lower wing.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. What is adverse yaw?
Adverse yaw is from when you are banking, or sorry, when you are increasing your roll in a turn, the the wing that's up is generating more lift, and inherently, because it's generating more lift, it's generating more drag, which then makes you want to yaw out of the turn.
Okay. Is there anything in our airplane? Is there any designs in our aircraft to try and counteract this?
Differential ailerons.
Differential ailerons are definitely one. Awesome. Um, why do I need rudder during my high power takeoffs, climbs, etc.?
Because of your left turning tendencies.
What are those left turning tendencies?
Let's see. So, torque effect, P factor, spiraling slipstream, and gyroscopic precession.
Okay, so let's go over the real tough ones. P factor and gyroscopic slipstream. What are those? Like, describe them to me.
So P factor is so as you so if you're as you're pitched up, the for the direction that my propeller spins, it or well anyways, it doesn't matter. I guess the downward propeller is generating because of the or due to the relative wind that's hitting it, it's generating more lift than the right side, or sorry, than the left side. Then so that makes your plane want to pull to the left.
Yep. So the descending blade has a greater angle of attack to the relative wind during a climb than the ascending blade, causing the aircraft to want to yaw to the left.
Right, that was cleaner.
Yep. And again, that's why we do these things to try and clean up these responses. I've also been
Right,
doing this for a lot longer,
sure.
right?
You know, this is extremely helpful because a lot of this is just reading in the books, and then I'm reading stuff and I'm writing things down, but speaking it is way different.
Yep. And, I definitely noticed that when I was teaching a lot of international students in UND, they all, like, if you let them say it if you let them talk in their native language, they knew the information. But ICAO level 4 English is required by the FAA and, well, ICAO. Um, and so I noticed that, like, getting the student to just talk through the answers helps a lot more than just telling them to study,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Um, awesome. Now, what about
Oh wait.
gyroscopic precession?
Yeah. So then gyroscopic precession is so example that I could use to explain it would be like with the tail dragger. Um, with a tail dragger, I guess as the aircraft speeds up, eventually when it lifts off, that force that goes forward, since your propeller is a spinning gyro, the force is going to be applied 90 degrees further in the direction of rotation, and then in the same direction.
Awesome. Causing the aircraft to yaw to the left. Right.
Yep.
Now, have you ever noticed in your airplane when you apply a little bit of forward pressure, like let's say you're coming back to the airport and you want to descend a little bit and you apply a little forward pressure and you got to just touch that right rudder?
I'm trying to think, because when I'm flying, it's always just I kind of just always look always in your scan checking the ball, and then I don't really think what my feet are doing, but it's like doing what it needs to do to keep the ball centered.
Oh, well, next time you go fly, see if you can notice it, because that is gyroscopic precession.
Okay,
right?
That makes sense.
Perfect answer though. Perfect answer. So let's get into some medical stuff. Now, I don't really dig into somebody's medical because, that's your personal thing and whatnot. But let's say that you have a first class medical. What
Okay.
happens after a year?
So after a year, it becomes a third class medical.
Awesome. Then what? What happens? What's the next mark for this medical?
The next mark is in when you'd have to.
Yeah, whenever it like either expires. So
I mean, so for me, I'm under the age of 35. Was it 40 or 35? Crap. I'm under the age of 40, so it would be valid for another 4 years.
Awesome. What medical is required for you to operate in commercially?
A second class.
Very least a second class. Now, the FAA and DPEs have been kind of harping on basic med. So who is eligible for basic med?
So you have to have a U.S. driver's license. You have to have previously held a medical. I can't remember the exact date, but it's after the year 2006. And you have to have never been denied or revoked a medical.
Okay. It's not never. It's your most recent.
Okay.
So let's say, currently I'm fighting the FAA for my medical back. It sucks. But my wife's a pilot, so we still get to fly our airplane. Since my most recent one was denied, I am not eligible for basic med. If I go and get one, if I eventually get approved for one, which, cross my fingers, hopefully by the end of the year, then I can just drop to basic med so that I don't have to deal with the FAA ever again.
That makes sense.
But what are some limitations? Let's say you use basic med. What are you now not allowed to do?
Right. So you're not allowed to fly in class alpha. You can't. Let's see. You can't fly an aircraft that's rated for more than 6 occupants. You can't fly more than 5 passengers. You can't fly an aircraft that has more than 250 horsepower. And the aircraft can't weigh more than 6,500 pounds.
So 6,000 pounds, 250 knots, not 250 horsepower.
Ah, shoot.
Right. But here's you're not using basic med. Read up on it just in case you get asked.
Yeah.
Okay. Last thing you'd want to do is fail a check ride because you didn't know about basic med, right?
Yeah, definitely gonna have to brush up on that. Thank you.
Yep. Awesome. Now let's dig into your flight plan. Before we do that, I'm gonna fix my screens.
Oh, and just a disclaimer. So I was gonna actually fill out my entire navlog and everything. I kind of just put my VFR waypoints, what I'm going to use for like my dead reckoning pilotage on the navlog, but I didn't fill out the entire navlog because basically for me recently we've been dealing with like our marine layer here, so it's been hard for me to get in my flights this week, to make sure that we're keeping all the maneuvers sharp. And then we got a window yesterday and I had to take it, so I ended up not having the time to fully fill it out.
Oh, no. You're fine. I mean, we'll talk about stuff. Plus, like, I'm not sure what 90% of this means.
Oh yeah, and there's also the four flight nav log that has like all the GPS waypoints, so you can just punch that all in and it'll give you like a reference
Yeah.
of what it looks like.
I mean, I do like I usually just go through like a straight line and we cover like a good like 100 miles on and off your route. And that usually kind of covers everything that we need to talk about. All right, let's go to this one. Okay, so this is your nav, or this is, where you told me that your route is going to be. What I am going to do is
Yep.
there. Okay, so we're going to be departing CRQ. All right, Palomar.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Oh wait, that's over here, isn't it?
Yep.
So we're going to be departing Palomar, and
Yep.
then going to Santa Barbara.
Yep.
So just kind of talk me through your route. So we're leaving Santa Barbara. Where's your top of climb, or roughly where would you expect your top of climb to be?
So I'm planning on of my altitude being 8,500 feet. Obviously dependent on weather. But the reason why I'm choosing that is because I'm choosing the Hollywood Park route as the VFR transition through the Class Bravo.
Awesome, and we've got that right here. There's your coastal route, mini route, Coliseum, Hollywood Park route. So available altitudes 85 through 95. Awesome. Kind of talk me through this. What are you going to do?
Yeah, so basically, obviously, just because of how complicated and busy our airspace is, I'm going to pick up flight following for this flight, and then so hopefully, I mean, in just because of the fact that the route goes through the Class Bravo, it's a very low chance that I would get dumped because they're too busy. But if I had to contact them, I'd be coming from the southern end, so I'd use the southern end frequency to contact them, and then I'd say a VFR request, and then I'd request a transition through Class Bravo via the Hollywood Park route.
Perfect.
And then so for that one, that's the 140-degree radial on the Van Nuys Van Nuys VOR. So put that in my CI and everything, and then follow it.
Yeah, I mean, you'd put that VOR in your radial and then you'd follow it. What are you going to put in your CDI? What actual number are you going to put in your CDI?
Well, let's see. So 140 degrees. I'd probably add 180 to it. Can't do math, but add 180 to it because I'm flying towards it.
So take 60, that gets you to 200. Add the remaining 120, that gets you to 320.
Yep, 320.
Yep. And I know it's so easy with a G5 because you've got an actual HSI as opposed to a CDI. Believe me, I have two G5s sitting on the shelf waiting to install them in my airplane. I just
very cool.
Haven't had the time.
Sure.
So we are going. Oh, where is that fix? What is it again? It is BPLQM.
Yeah, you're.
Oh, wrong one. BPLQ. I'm looking at the wrong place. No, I'm not.
No, you actually were. Yeah, that point that you put right there. Yeah, that is it. Yeah.
Awesome. And then the next waypoint is really the Vinny VOR. Or
I think
it's just dumping you out.
Yeah, it's basically the instructions say like once you're north of the Bravo, you can
on course.
Yeah, you can on course, but obviously probably just wait for SoCal to tell you resume on navigation.
So we'll put the Vinny VOR then. All right.
Yep.
Now, what kind of equipment am I going to need to punch in through this Bravo airspace?
So you're going to need a ADSB out and a mode C transponder.
Okay. And two-way communication, two-way radios.
Oh yeah, and a two-way radio
Yeah.
for equipment. Yeah.
A lot of students don't think of that, because shit. I always have a two-way radio. But remember, there's
Right. Yeah.
there's gliders, there's Cubs out there with no electrical systems at all.
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
It's hard for me to perceive that just being in this place where I've learned to fly, just because like you could even see like my airport CRQs within the mode CVL of the Class Bravo for San Diego.
Yeah.
So it's just you can't really fly anywhere, I guess, in SoCal if you don't have the equipment.
Yep. Now we departed your airport. What airport is this, or what airspace is this airport?
It's Class Delta.
It is Class Delta. What airspace is on the ground here?
Echo.
Sure is. What is this airspace right here?
That's a restricted area.
Can I go in this?
So you can't go in there unless you receive permission from the whatever controller.
Okay.
Is the controller for that airspace.
How do I find
and
it?
So to be on your sectional, there's it shows right there like the frequencies that you can contact. It also says like the hours that it's hot. But even when it's not hot, obviously, because that's a Marine Corps base. Always contact, and also I think you have to always contact to get prior permission before going through that restricted area.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely recommend it. I've never punched into a restricted airspace, and I don't plan on it. I don't even bother asking.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm just gonna go around.
Right. Yep.
Okay. So, where are you going from here then? What's your plan? Because this restricted airspace is pretty, like, it even comes offshore.
Yep. So my plan is I'm gonna fly to the west of it, just to the west of it, and I have like some GPS points of what I'd fly, and also, but yeah, just pretty much just gonna be just offshore, and I'm gonna calculate obviously my gliding distance for the day to make sure that I can glide back to the beach if I in an emergency scenario, as well as what's nice is actually going for the flight. It's like probably like 80 or 90% of the flight you're within gliding distance of an airport at cruise altitude.
Awesome.
But yeah.
Now, let's say we did lose our engine like right here. Where are you gonna try and land?
So there's actually, it's not charted, but there's a nondescript airport. Well, yeah, I think it's the U right there with the circle. There's a nondescript airport right there, and then or not airport, but just like a runway. So I'd use that.
Awesome. That's not a bad idea. All right. Now, what is this? The purple one. There was a better one over here. There we go. What is this purple one?
So that one's it's a marine sanctuary, and then it's different than like the wildlife one, where I know like the authority of it's the NOAA, I think.
Okay, so head over to the key, because am I wrong? So, what's the purple one with the dots?
Oh, that's an ADIS, but that one's actually not an ADIS.
Oh, that one's not?
If you zoom in on it, there's like boxes that says flight operations below 1,000 AGL over designated areas within the Channel Islands. Yeah.
Oh,
it's a weird one. Yeah.
Yeah, because I looked at that, I was like, I guess maybe. And then I went and looked at the sectional or the key, and I'm like, yeah, because they look like exactly the same.
I know, they do look pretty similar.
Oh, I guess this is like rows of dots, and that's a single row of dots. No, there's multiple rows of dots.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to figure out exactly what that one is. So it's pretty much well, what's the blue one then?
Well, yeah. So the blue one is that's like the wildlife one, and then it's asked but not required that you fly at least 2,000 AGL.
Awesome. I wouldn't go mess around over here. I don't know what's going on over there. All right. What's this little star right here?
The little star is That's a beacon.
Okay, it is the
Off,
beacon.
or yeah, it's like the specific location in regards to the, yeah.
It is the specific location. What's that dot?
That's the location of VOR.
That is the location of the VOR. Perfect. What is this right here? The purple with the lines.
That's an MOA.
Okay. Do I need a clearance to enter this MOA?
No.
Okay. Awesome. What do I need to worry about with an MOA?
Low flying, high speed military aircraft in operation.